In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the front brakes on the Subaru Forester. Pads and rotors located right behind your front wheels, so let's get started. Use a 19mm socket to remove all 5 lug nuts and then remove the wheel. What I prefer to do first is push the caliper piston in. To do that, I'm going to pop the bleeder screw cap off. With a 10mm wrench, I'm going to loosen up the bleeder screw and snug it back up so it doesn't drip until I'm ready. I have a hose that's going to attach to the bleeder screw to make less of a mess. And now open it up. About a half a turn should be plenty. And now I can stick a pry bar right through the openings of the caliper and compress the caliper in by prying on it. There we go. Nice and slow. Now I'm going to give this about 10 seconds so that any air that may have gotten in there, especially if you don't have a hose like this, can bleed out. Then we can close it off and continue. All right, close this off. Remove your hose if you had one, and remove your wrench. Wipe off any brake fluid. Clean it off with brake parts cleaner if needed, and cap this back off. Now use a 14mm wrench and break free the 2 bolts, holding the caliper onto the bracket. Unthread this one partially, break free the bottom one, and remove both. Take them both out. Now you can take the caliper and inspect it after squishing the pistons in. If you see any fluid here, that's a concern. You need to replace the caliper. And also if it's difficult to press in, that also means that you have seized pistons, so it also requires a caliper replacement. Here's why I compressed the pistons the way I did, because this being a dual piston caliper, you need a dual caliper depression tool like this. It is important that you push both of them simultaneously in, so unless you have this tool, find something that will gently push both of them in at the same time. Also, if these boots get swollen like this, or appear swollen I should say, that's most likely just air stuck behind them. So with a pocket screwdriver, get underneath the lip, pry it up, and it should go right back in. This one seems okay, but I'll check it anyway. Perfect. Now using this area, I'm going to hook the caliper on top of the strut. I don't want to put any pressure on the brake hose by letting it hang on the brake hose. Take the pads out. These are a little bit stuck in here. They should slide out. And the outer pad. Using a 19mm socket, remove the 2 bolts holding the caliper bracket onto the knuckle. Leave this one in a couple threads so it can hold the bracket while you take off the top one. Finish removing the bottom, take off the bracket, set it aside for cleaning. Remove your rotor. If it's seized, tap on the braking surface or between the lug studs with a hammer. Just don't hit the threads, of course. At this point, the hub surface is a little bit rusty. It's not in poor condition, but I do want to remove this surface rust here and then coat it with an anti-corrosive coating such as anti-seize to prevent this from happening again and to prevent the rotor from seizing on. To clean this off, you can use a wire brush if it's light, or you could use a fine, non-abrasive sanding disc. Try not to remove too much material with a coarse grit sandpaper or anything like that. You can also use a wire wheel on a drill if that's what you have. Now that you're done cleaning, rinse it all off with brake parts cleaner. And let's apply some anti-seize. Apply a thin layer and make sure you don't get it on the lug studs. Go around the center of the hub here so the rotor doesn't seize up. If you put too much, it'll squeeze out and start flinging as the car drives faster. I'm going to put the rotor on backwards so it can hold it on for me. Use brake parts cleaner to clean off the surface, degrease it. It does have oils from the factory and you want to get off any fingerprints that you may have gotten on it. And you can wipe it off with a clean rag. Flip it around and install it the right way. Do the same to this outer braking surface. To hold this rotor on, I'm going to use an old axle nut and a lug nut so I can put some pressure on it, prevent it from wanting to keep falling off. With my caliper bracket on the bench, what I'm going to do is pop off the old anti-rattle clips so we can clean underneath and then replace them. Now over here you can see it is quite rusted, however it's not rotted, so I think a wire brush will do the trick. Just clean all this off. That looks pretty good. We're going to rinse it off with brake parts cleaner. And once it has dried, I'm going to apply a thin layer of silicone paste or brake grease. Now if you use silicone paste, make sure it's rated for high temperatures. That way it can withstand the temperatures that the brakes operate at. And just a thin layer will do. You don't need a lot, because if you put too much, it's actually going to squeeze out when we put the anti-rattle clip on, and it'll get on the rotor, and you don't want that. Take the new clip, slide it right over, make sure it locks in. Now do the same on the other side. One more thing we have to do is remove the slide pins, clean them off, and you want to do this one at a time. This one, for example, has a rubber bushing. The other one does not. So you want to make sure it goes back exactly where it came from. The best way to clean these off, unless they're seized and rusted, is to just wipe them off. Inspect up here in the lip that the boot seals in. Mine's perfectly clean. A lot of times corrosion builds up there, so you want to clean it off with a wire brush. And since I had nice clean grease in here, I'm not worried about cleaning all the way into the caliper bore. What I will do, however, is add a little bit of grease in the boot. This will act as a reserve of grease in there. And the rest that's on my brush, I'm going to put on the pin. Slide the pin all the way in. You'll notice that there might be some air stuck in there, and to get that out, you just squeeze the pin or push on it, squeeze the boot, and that should allow all the excess air to come out. And this is nice and lubricated. Flip this over, do the same to the other pin. This caliper bracket is now ready to go back on the vehicle. Take the caliper and slide it over the rotor. Start in your mounting bolts. With them bottomed out, the torque for these is 100 foot-pounds. Let's put the pads in. The wear indicator is supposed to go on the bottom of both pads, inner and outer. Slide it in. Make sure this slides in smoothly. If they get stuck, that means you likely didn't clean up the bracket enough and it's binding up the pad, so you need to take it back off and keep cleaning. These move freely. Perfect. Take your caliper, slide it over the pads, push the slider pins in if needed, have your bolts ready, and start the 2 caliper to slider pin bolts in. Now the torque on these is only 20 foot-pounds, so if you're going to bottom them out with a power tool, be gentle. If you used a lug nut to hold on the rotor, remove it. Reinstall the wheel. We're going to start on all 5 lug nuts, bottom them out in a cross pattern, and also in a cross pattern, torque them to 89 foot-pounds. Once again, 89 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Double check them all. Now repeat the same procedure on the other side. Pump up the brake pedal a few times. That way the pads can seat slowly. Now let's top off the master cylinder with brake fluid. Under the hood on the driver's side of the engine compartment, right by the firewall, you'll see your brake master cylinder with that yellow cap. If there's any debris around it, wipe it off. This one is very clean. So remove the cap, and you'll see that it says .3 brake fluid is all you're supposed to use in this system, which is perfect. We're going to add some until the level's right at this line. That's the full line. It's hard to see, but if you shake the reservoir, you should be able to see the level. It's right about here now. So that is full. Let's cap this off. And there we have it. Job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.